Hello, everybody. Starting to trickle in here. We're just going to give it a few minutes for folks to join us, and then we'll be hopping on in, folks. And while we're just waiting for a few more folks to join us here, we'll have a poll firing on inside of the chat. We would love to know a little bit more about what you guys do day to day and how you found our webinar here today. So we'll be firing out that poll for you guys shortly. Awesome, that poll is live. Let us know how you guys got here, where you're coming from, and we would love to keep an eye on that. All right, welcome to folks that are just trickling in. We're going to be starting here at the 2-minute mark, just giving folks a few seconds to settle in. Oh, hey, Gabby, that's a very familiar name. Hello, hello. Where's everybody dialing in from this morning? Awesome, folks. Well, feel free to keep sounding off in the chat with where you're from, responding to those polls, all of those things. We'd love to know what's going on in your lives. So keep on typing away there. But we're now 2 minutes past, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome everybody to our AI conversation with our good pals over at Jasper. So we're really excited to chat with all of you guys here today. And Val, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide. Awesome. So just a little quick intro from us before we get started and a few little housekeeping reminders. If you have any questions, please do use the Q&A function at the bottom right. We love to answer your guys' questions live, but dropping them into that Q&A button just helps us stay organized. So we really appreciate that. And then of course, the recording of our session will be emailed right after. So if you missed out on any of our hot takes, you'll be able to rewatch those anytime with that instant replay. So we're really excited to have everyone here today. And with that, I'll go ahead and kick off with a little intro here for folks that might not know me. Hello, I'm Sam Dehart and I work here at Assembled. We are a workforce management platform focused on optimizing all things scheduling, forecasting, reporting. I know all of that stuff super well because I actually met Assembled originally as a customer myself on the workforce management team over at Imperfect Foods before I transitioned on over here. So that's a little bit about me, and I work on our community team here at Assembled. And I'll go ahead and kick the ball over to you, Amanda, for a quick intro before we get started. And of course, would love to hear more about what Jasper does.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here to chat about AI and customer support and customer success and the combination of both of those things. My name's Amanda Case. I currently work at Jasper as the Senior Manager of Product Support. So I oversee our frontline support team that is doing all things interacting with customers, answering emails, chats, really just assisting our customers through the entire life cycle and their journey with Jasper. And if I have previously worked in SaaS and fintech, so leading support teams at scale is something that I love to do. I love thinking about creating like best-in-class user experiences, truly. So Jasper is an AI content platform for those of you who might not know. And it's basically built to respond to you using generative AI. So it's a technology, or Gen AI is a technology that is built on large language models that takes user prompts and creates new content. And Jasper, we were really one of the first companies to market that and build a product around generative AI assisting with content creation, whether that be blog posts, social media campaigns, email campaigns, anything like that, the use cases are truly endless. And Jasper allows you to interact with AI through prompting and whatever you really need it to do. We're kind of focused now on being the AI partner for businesses and marketing teams. And our mission is really to streamline the content creation process and provide our users with a tool that helps them do their job more efficiently and effectively with AI.
Awesome. Well, I think we all here know that AI is all the rage these days, and I am so, so excited to get to chat through this topic with someone that's really kind of on the cutting edge of all of this stuff. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Amanda. And with that, we're going to go ahead and hop into some of your guys' burning questions. So to kick off, would love to hear, Amanda, what trends are you most excited about for AI in the world of support?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, AI is a hot topic of conversation right now, and it's pretty much everywhere. So in the world of support, I think what I'm most excited about is the aspect of like increased personalization and efficiency for internal teams and also how you interact with customers. The first thing I think about, and what I think a lot of people think about with AI and support, is chatbots and AI powered chatbots. And I think there's a ton of improvement there that we can see to obviously like resolve those repetitive routine issues that customers have, but do so with increased personalization and sentiment analysis and things like that, where AI can really improve those experiences. I think it would be amazing if the customer, when they get to your support team, isn't frustrated with the bot interaction that they just had. They're not annoyed with the automation that they were just put through, that when they actually get to the humans on their team, if it is a deflection method, that they're pleased with that they feel like they've gotten somewhere. And I think AI can help improve those bot interactions in that way. And then I think it's not just chatbots. I think there's other things that AI can help with, whether that's predictive support, sentiment analysis, just like really improving the customer experience and finding the right way to flag conversations and get them to the right teams. As I think we all know, customers are going to have increasingly increase their expectations of like what support they should be getting, whether that's real-time support, 24/7 support, omni-channel support. It's really hard to do, and it's a big challenge for a lot of support teams. So I think the increased personalization, empathy, accuracy, quickness that AI can bring to a lot of the workflows of support are really exciting.
You know, that's such an interesting point that I think like a lot of the times when we're first starting to think about this technology, perhaps we mostly think about it in terms of deflection, but there's actually quite a lot of quality and speed building that can come from these, like both internally and externally. So super exciting. And I'm sure I'm not the only person here that's ever been caught in one of those frustrating automated like IVR loops before. So very hopeful myself that this technology will make those loops just a thing of the past. So very excited to see all the work Jasper's doing in that direction. And speaking of, what does your AI strategy for your team at Jasper currently look like?
Yeah, I think for us, like we are always still human first. Like we are always thinking about the end user experience and then layering AI where it makes sense and where it works for our team and where it works for our users. We are actually always kind of climbing this uphill battle being a AI company with users expecting us to be AI and expecting us to have like a robot essentially answer their inquiry. I can't tell you how many times we are asked if like we are real people, if we are real humans on the other side of the ticket, like before we even engage with that customer and start that customer interaction. So we really try and lean into those human-based interactions where it's needed and where we think it will lead to the customer to success on our platform. But we're always thinking where AI can add the value. So we're not just throwing it at support because we're an AI company, but like it has to be strategic. So I think everyone's AI strategy or like our AI strategy involves aspects of like defining those areas of opportunity, defining the best practice and use cases, and then implementing and integrating it. And like any other tool, like you have to monitor and optimize it. Even though it is AI, like you have to use it as a tool that works for your team. So we're definitely still in the early stages of it, but you know, deflection, bots handling repetitive tickets, increasing our workflows internally, helping us with help documentation, process creation, things like that, where we're just like increasing our efficiency and allowing AI to handle like less complex issues and interactions and free up some of our team's time.
That completely makes sense. And I really like what you mentioned there about even with all of these generative AI tools that are coming to solve all of our problems, you still get in what you put in. And it's really important to think about your why and kind of gearing your actions towards that. That's really helpful advice. Cool. So, how would you say your AI strategy interacts with your people strategy?
That's a great question. I think, like, specifically from my perspective as a team manager, and someone in like a leader position on the support team, we will always, and like we are continuing to hire human agents. Like, AI is not replacing anyone on our team, but we're really thinking about like how can it reduce the workload of our team? How can it enhance training and onboarding? How can it help us with job satisfaction and like reducing burnout of support agents, which is like all too common in the world of frontline customer support and customer facing work. So how can AI kind of help us solve those problems? I think when I think about our team growth strategy and forecasting, a lot that goes into that is like the unit economic of tickets, team capacity, how large your team is, what hours of operation you want to offer support to your customer base. So I'd love one of those inputs to be like, okay, if our agents can handle 100 tickets per day now, like how can we use AI to make that number 50 and then redistribute that time into proactive support that drives impactful business like retention and conversion. Have our team do less routine account cancellations, refunds, administrative work for in like where our SaaS business lies is like far too common, to really like transform our team to be more strategic and drive adoption, conversion, retention instead of just being like ticket monsters, as we like to call them sometimes internally. And then, yeah, I think like in other ways we have a distributed team. Like, how can we leverage AI to create onboarding documentation? I know a lot of people work fully remote. Like, how can you use certain things like that to just like enhance also internal processes, not everything that's customer facing?
That completely makes sense. You know, that perspective actually reminds me of something that I heard. Well, I heard maybe puts it strongly. I saw on the LinkedIn sphere from our pal Ben Gardner over at Drift. He mentioned that, like, so often people think about AI and deflection in terms of like ultimately reducing your headcount need. But really, like, the way people maybe should be thinking about this in more of a people first sense is what kind of work could you create, or like what kind of opportunities could exist on your team if some of that, as you put it, ticket monster work is taken care of, and we can maybe give people a little bit more time out of queue to just focus on things that maybe are more impactful or perhaps even more in line with the career paths that they would ultimately envision, things like that. So a very powerful perspective. And one thing that came out of that LinkedIn discussion that I saw was if you had a magic wand and you could create a 40-hour position on your team that you can't today because of the ticket bandwidth, what would that position perhaps be? What are some things that you could see your team focusing their time on if they're not going to be doing as much of that ticket monster work? And by the way, while we're chatting this out live, would love to hear in the chat if anyone has any top of mind ideas for things they just can't wait to divert a few man hours to. So curious, but I'll go ahead and kick the ball your way, Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I kind of think about internally, our VP of marketing has this awesome slide that we show Jasper customers where it's kind of like these different categories and how you're spending your time. And if we can help composition go down, then how can you redistribute that time towards like editing and research and ideation, and like same exact thing for support teams. If we can cut down on a lot of the time it takes to even respond to tickets, create saved replies, create help documentation, how can we engage with customers in a more strategic way, but also how can we save time? Can we support other internal team workflows? Can we have a stronger line of voice of the customer to the product team, and like think of like really company-wide goals that we maybe not don't do day to day now because we are so focused on just like the number and answering tickets and making sure SLAs are met and things like that, and have that be part of our work, but not all of it, and be more strategic and oriented towards like a lot of business goals with some of that freed up time potentially.
That's so interesting. And, you know, I'm kind of noticing this similar line from one of your last responses that it's really not just about building efficiency into these workflows. It's also about taking that space built from that efficiency to create higher quality work and higher quality workflows. So it's interesting that it's not all about speed and efficiency. It's also about those quality gains in your process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So moving on from here, I would love to hear a little bit more about, of course, like as support leaders, one of the most common questions we always hear from agents is, should I be concerned about the future of my job? And I'm curious, I'm sure this probably has come up on your own team or perhaps like interacting out there with folks in the industry and in the broader world, but I'm curious like what you would say to agents that are concerned about their job prospects in relation to this kind of AI revolution.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a common question. I think the way that I like to think about it is that we've always had automation and support. And AI is kind of just another step in that direction. It will be a profound one. I think it will change jobs, kind of how they're done. And I think it's very natural to worry about. But I would say, like, human support agents will always have immense value, or I see immense value in having humans on your team. Um, you know, whether if it's a complex case or an important case, there are going to be shortcomings and downfalls of AI where you want to have humans on the other end of that. And in our situation, like I see it with high value customers. Anytime a high value customer comes into our queue, like we want to put that customer in contact with a support specialist, a CSM, someone on the team that knows their background, that has background information on their account, their journey with us, how much money they're spending on our platform, like things like that, that necessarily AI isn't the best at doing. And it's funny that you already brought up the IVR example, but I think that's like a great situation. Like humans always want to talk to humans, and I think that's very natural. When IVR was introduced, I mean, I know for me right now, every time I call a company like UPS, like I am just smashing the one, or I'm saying agent, agent, agent in the phone. Like I just want to talk to someone. And I find more value in that than an automated workflow that isn't the best. So I think they can work in combination. Like I always see AI as an additive to our customer experience in ways that it can improve it and not a one-to-one replacement. Again, I'll repeat, like, we'd love to have AI reduce a lot of those repetitive workflows and then have our team really lean into one-on-one interactions, things that really drive our business, our team more strategic.
That completely makes sense. And sorry if anyone's hearing a motorcycle backfiring on the outside. There's somebody doing some donuts in the parking lot right now, I suppose. But anyway, that completely makes sense. And I guess it kind of all goes back to that same thing, kind of that common line of like, it's not just efficiency, it's also quality. And there are some things where like having that human being part of the interaction really is part of the quality.
Yeah.
Like something I actually think about often is like in support, so often we actually deal with things that are actually very emotional labor. Like, for example, I think back to my days at Imperfect Foods personally, and those kinds of tickets that I received, which are more on the D2C side. There's a chance that somebody's writing into you because a box didn't arrive on time for an event that was like really important to them. And I'm sure a lot of folks that are in the D2C space probably have had the same ticket come up in varying degrees. And what does like I'm sorry really mean if it's coming from a bot that really can't really feel and empathize for you in the same way that a human can? And that human empathy is always going to be an important part of the interaction.
Totally. Yeah. And even that example makes me think about my last role. I was at a B2C company that was like a buy now, pay later product in the fintech space. And a lot of times customers would accidentally send us large sums of money. And like we are able to identify that those customers are anxious, stressed, like they are having a hard time. They want a human on the other end of not even like the email, but on the phone to be proactive in that outreach to identify the problem potentially before it happens. So there's a ton of different use cases, I think, across different industries of support. And for each individual team, like you will know what those interactions are, and you'll want to keep them with your internal team that knows how to handle, knows how to be empathetic, instead of passing those off to AI, I think.
That completely makes sense. And, I think something we're kind of skirting around here too is like the internal enablement side of AI. Like perhaps like that internal enablement side of AI can help you better identify like who are my customers that really need that extra little human touch? Like, who is really coming in spicy? And we are seeing lots of tools come into the marketplace, actually, I believe, including Jasper, for analyzing tone and being able to understand more about what's happening at that interaction at scale, potentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So anyway, moving on here. So what would you say are the most common AI pitfalls to avoid as someone that's seen this lay of the land in a pretty robust way?
Yeah, I think the most common one and something that we talk about a lot is that thinking that AI will do everything for you, that it is a like fix all or that it will do all of the work. I think it's a really powerful tool to have in your tool belt, but you have to use that to your advantage. You have to know how to use it and make the most of it. It's not just going to be deploying AI and then it solves all of the problems or handles all of the work. I think there's a learning curve that kind of comes with AI. You have to dive in to understand how the training works and the confidence levels and things like that. And then we always say, like, Jasper is our content creator. We are the strategist and the editor of that work. So always monitoring outputs, putting like our editor hat on to review the content creation. And it helps a ton, again, with efficiency and just breaking through that writer's block for our end user use case. So I think AI is just like, don't think that it will do everything for you. Like, there is work that needs to be done. It's a tool in your tool belt. You're going to have to optimize it for your workflows. And then the second one I think is like ignoring it. I think that AI is so powerful right now, and it's as you know, growing very quickly. I think in the coming years it'll start to be things that teams actually like hire for, and it's a skill for each individual. So I would say lean into it. Don't think that it's going to solve every single problem, but find where it can help your team or your customers and start implementing it there.
Oh gosh, Amanda, are you telling me ChatGPT isn't going to solve all of my problems? Oh man, well, I just don't know what I'll do now. Just kidding. I totally hear you there. I've actually had similar like realizations myself, like just from my own personal experimentation. Like, one of my favorite things to use AI for personally, I know that there's a lot of folks likely on the call right now that have been in one-on-one calls with me in the past. And one of my favorite applications for AI these days is taking my call transcripts and running them actually through Notion AI. Shout out to Notion, one of my favorite brands out there, for creating my meeting notes. And it really takes a lot of that manual elbow grease out of it. Like, it takes what was like a 30-minute experience down to like maybe like a 10 or 15-minute experience. But I've actually done a cross comparison of ones that I went back in and gave that extra 5 minutes of editing elbow grease, and then the ones that you don't. And you can really tell a difference. Like, AI can get you, like, I would say, like, to your point, enough to kind of crush the writer's block. Um, but it gets you that 70-80% there. But if you want to use AI to kind of boost that sense of quality as well, like, you still need to put in that last 20% with that human elbow grease, at least for now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Cool. That completely makes sense. And something else you said in your response that I thought was just fascinating is you mentioned that down the line, like, these kinds of skills might be things that we look to hire for more than we do today at kind of the start of this evolution. And I'm curious if you have any advice for maybe skills that would be useful for folks to develop now that might make them more hireable kind of post AI revolution.
Yeah, I think that something that is important is learning how to interact with AI, and we call it prompting, but just like understanding what will give you a great output, or not, or how to incorporate it in your workflows. So I think I could come into Jasper or ChatGPT and write something like, write me a blog post about dogs. And maybe I don't get a great output. But if I know how to interact with AI and I've learned about it and I've tested it and I've prompted it, I know that there is value in like very good inputs. We always say that like your input, a great input will give you a great output, and vice versa. So I could say something along the lines of, write me an engaging blog post in the voice of a content creator, using these keywords, with these specifics, something very tailored to get me a really great output. Because if you're one-to-one, you're kind of going up against that skill building. If someone has never used AI, they're probably going to start very generic. So I think that people can use AI in their jobs in everyday life. It's obviously accessible. So I think just learning how to interact with AI and then starting to potentially implement it in some of your daily workflows is a great first start.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, I'm not nearly as much of an AI expert as Amanda is, because I'm more on I don't actually like work directly in the industry in the same way she does. But one of my favorite little tips for prompt building myself is just remember that AI only really knows the context that you give it. And the more context that you give it to go on, generally, the better the experience will be. Like, for example, going back to the example I did a minute ago with using Notion AI to move in my notes via call transcript, something I found with that workflow is if you just drop in the call transcript and say, make me notes, it has no idea like whose voice it should even be writing in. Like, it doesn't know who you are. It doesn't know what this meeting was about. But if you just give it those little kernels of like, my name is Sam and I'm this person in this call and here's what I do, here's what this call was about, you'll get a lot more, I think you get a lot more mileage out of it. And it sounds like that's a pretty consistent truth on your side of the world too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the context that you give it, the look back abilities of AI, the prompting, I think all of that comes into combination with obviously using AI as a tool and like how you can get good outputs, bad outputs, how you can work with AI to improve those.
Awesome. And just a little reminder, folks, that if you guys have any questions for us that you would like us to answer here live, you can pop them into the questions tab and we will hop on those towards the end of the call. So please feel free to drop in all of your questions and thoughts there. We're really excited to get back to you. And then next up here, how can we leverage AI for a customer base that may just not be as receptive to it?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways to implement AI. As I said in the very beginning, we probably jump to AI equals chatbot, but it doesn't always have to look like that. There's tons of applications for it, and there's a different degree of visibility that it can have for users. So if we're thinking, if the question is like, how do we implement it for a customer basis support team that's not as receptive to it, just I would say be transparent potentially where AI is working. I love the idea of if the customer is engaging with the bot, they should know that they're engaging with the bot. Like you shouldn't try and hide that under a human name or someone on your team. Like it should be very clear for the user when they're engaging with AI or when they're engaging with automation versus when they're engaging with a human. And I think that transparency goes a long way. But again, like the AI can be working on the back end. It doesn't have to be as forward and customer facing as a bot for you guys to still implement it as a great tool for your team. And then I think like for Jasper, as we work with customers that might be slightly hesitant, it's very common to not be as receptive to AI, to have some concerns. Like we try and clearly communicate the value prop, like how can AI help you and your teams and your experiment or your experience. And then start small, like implement it in small ways, build up. It doesn't have to be all for one. And then just like help with training and support. I think hand-holding, providing resources is always very helpful if you're trying to kind of increase that reception and the trust in AI.
That completely makes sense. And I really like your note there about like AI, like it doesn't always have to be the chatbot flavor of AI that we've all kind of become more familiar with. It can also be like an internal enablement tool that just makes your team's day to day easier. And if that's the case, your customer, to quote the famous TikTok, how would they know? They'll never know. Yeah, how would they know? If it's like an internal only feature. But then on the other side, if you are making this a front-facing area of your product, it's important that that is very transparent. And I also liked what you mentioned in an earlier question around like there might also just be scenarios where AI isn't going to be your appropriate front line. Like for example, high valuable clients, or I've heard from other folks in the space, sometimes certain subject matters, like things that are really financial or very emotional, like perhaps that's where like it's always going to make sense to have a human at the front line of the interaction. And if understandably, those are kinds of interactions that folks are just less receptive to engaging with the bot, but also not all AI has to be bot flavored.
Totally.
Cool, that completely makes sense. So actually kind of a bit of a riff on this question. So far we've chatted a little bit about how you can leverage this with a customer base that may be less receptive to AI. Do you have any advice for maybe leveraging AI in a team that's less receptive to AI?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to the question of like, I would say if your team, it's a valid concern. I would say have them involved in the process. I think a key to addressing those concerns is being transparent with your team as well and having them part of the implementation ideation process so they can feel how it's working in combination. They can feel the value add. It's not like I'm the team manager and I say one Monday morning in our team weekly update, hey, we're now using AI to do this, this, and this. Like I would want my team, if they are hesitant, to be involved in picking an AI provider and deciding what use cases we all think it might be best for layering that into our experience. So I would say just have them involved in that process is a good practice for helping increase the trust and adoption if you are looking to introduce it to your team.
Cool. That completely makes sense. So I feel like so far we've talked quite a lot about use cases where AI may not make sense, like for maybe really emotional or very, sorry again, there's another person doing donuts in the parking lot if people can hear that. But as far as like use cases go, we've talked a lot about use cases where AI may not make sense. Like for example, like really emotional situations or really perhaps very impactful situations like working with a very high dollar customer or potentially a very sensitive issue like misbillings and things like that. But I would love to hear your take on any use cases that you think AI is especially well suited for.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer it a little bit from how we've kind of rolled out a lot of AI processes and then jump to where I think it would be great in support. I think in general, like our CS team is using Jasper and using AI in our daily workflows, whether that be summarization, writing emails, creating content to educate users, or knowledge-based documentation, ideation, Facebook posts. Like I can tell everyone very transparently in this webinar that when I was promoting this on LinkedIn, like I used Jasper to help me write that post. And I said, optimize for like a LinkedIn post, improve writing. So a lot of those tools like we are using day to day. On our support team specifically, I think ways that we use it internally and what it's really, really helped us with is we have a distributed team. Some of our team works in the Philippines, some of them works in the US. I think AI can help kind of like close the language barrier gap, improve writing. I, as a native English speaker, use it every day to improve my own writing. So it's really helpful there to kind of improve writing across our entire team, no matter where they're located. Consistency with tone and style we touched on briefly. One thing that I know is a problem for us and a challenge for probably other support teams is that you have a handful of agents and they're all writing potentially their own saved replies. They're all editing documentation. And if you don't have a really tight closed loop, it can get a little bit sloppy. Everyone has their own tone. So something that we're doing is going over all of our help docs and kind of going through this like tone audit and seeing what we think our tone is, and then actually having Jasper tell us what our tone is, and then going through an audit and making sure everything is tight. We want all of our customers to be reading our knowledge-based articles through the same tone of voice. And then for ways in support that I think it's going to be very helpful for, again, is those repetitive issues that you see time and time again. We have a ton of customers reaching out about cancellations that fit within our policy that are rather straightforward, and we're still processing those. I think we can set up automated workflows to have the AI interact with those customers, still provide great, quick feedback. But for those customers that are not going to stay with our product or they just have a quick interaction, we can leverage AI in those ways to kind of quick close, increase customer happiness. A lot of what they're looking for when they come and reach out to support is just for us to kind of perform the request that they have, quickly close it out, and just like give them the confidence that yes, they will not be billed. They are good to go moving forward, not really using Jasper. So for every team, that's going to look different across industry again, but I think you can all identify some of those low lift conversations that you're okay with automation interacting with, whether that be customer type or conversation type, and group those in a way where you can probably identify 15 to 30% of your ticket interactions that might be okay to not ever touch a human. And I think those would be really great to have AI bots or any type of automation interact with.
That completely makes sense. It sounds like kind of like with all process improvement, eat the elephant one bit at a time and like pick those low hanging fruits to attack first. Cool. That completely makes sense. So I have a feeling you may have already answered this with some of your other answers. So forgive the double dip potentially. But what would you say is the next thing you're hoping to improve with AI at your support team? And how is that project going?
Yeah, I think the project that we're focusing on right now is kind of a lot of our help documentation. Something that I'm excited about, which actually another teammate of mine brought up, is potentially like every time there is a new feature that's launched, create a zap or an automation that tells us, okay, take this post from our team or this release, these notes, and create help documentation, create FAQs, create some answers to those FAQs to get the ball rolling for us. We are moving very quickly and a lot of times have trouble keeping up proactively with a lot of the things that we need to on like the self-service side of support. So we're trying to protect our human layer at all times and like really enable our customers to be able to go to Jasper or go to anyone's site and find the resources they need. And I'm excited that AI can potentially help us expedite that process. And again, break through not writer's block, but just get the ball rolling and allow us to be more editorial than just creating the content because it already exists and we just need to repurpose it in the form of help documentation. But again, I think the other things I'd love to, and we're not doing yet, but I'd love to start using AI for is potentially QAing new teammates' work or going through a QA process of tickets. It's something that I know a lot of us don't have time for and use other tools to help with that. So those processes that might be on the back burner or forgotten, like how can we bring those to the forefront again and really make sure things are tight in those areas? One of my favorite aspects of customer support and customer success is the iteration with product and really elevating the voice of the customer. Our teams are on those front lines. Like we ingest so much feedback and so much information from customers. And I think it's somewhat difficult to summarize that in just this anecdotal feedback. So how do we leverage both quantitative and qualitative feedback and really get that into the hands of our product team where it's valuable? And I'd love to have AI and find ways to kind of create templates or some type of process where it can read through all of that feedback, generate a synopsis, have us look over it, add anything that might have been missed, and then add some data that we have from our support tool and create like a really robust framework for us to elevate the voice of the customer in those ways. So a lot of things that are kind of floating around in my mind that are really exciting that we all don't have a ton of time for unless the team is very large and robust, but we're always trying to stay scrappy at Jasper. So a lot of those things and just always the wheels are turning. How can we bring AI into this and how can we optimize this, make it more efficient? How can we enable our internal teams?
Awesome. Cool. Well, with that, I would love to switch gears here over to our user Q&A side. So we do have one from my friend Brandon over at Cleveland Golf. Can Jasper analyze calls also? We have seen that there are a lot of valuable data hidden within our daily calls, like request type, product warranty issues, etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't believe that we have that functionality yet for analysis of calls, but what we like to do a lot of the time is just either grab a transcript or some type of summary of the call and put it into Jasper. And it is really good at is creating a summary, or if you prompt it to give you the key points, the 5 key points, whatever you need from that to pull out of it, you can use Jasper or other AI tools to really pull out whatever you want. And I'll fall back to, I think that's one of the big advantages if you know what to ask for, if you know what to prompt it with, if you know what you're looking for and how to like drive those results using the AI, then it's a really great use case to just pop in an input and then get a really great output.
Sorry, I just realized I was muted. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Brandon, as well, one solution that I am aware of out there in the space, there's a company called Flip CX that describes themselves. I haven't actually experimented with their product at all yet, but they describe themselves as the basically end game of IVRs, like say goodbye to IVRs because this thing's just going to collect all the data and route it to the right person. I've never experimented with it personally, but as somebody that's like very into all the AI tools and CX, like I think that's one that's piqued my interest that I've considered exploring. So if you do happen to take a peek, please report back. I'm always super curious there.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm a +1 to that. I think there's so many tools out there. They have so much functionality and capability. I think that'll be awesome.
Absolutely. Cool. And next up, we have Alan. And one second, I'm clicking through Brandon's question there. Next up, we have Alan. Amanda, is the utilization of AI for your customers or client based on demographics or age? Ooh, that's an interesting one. So I'm guessing, I might be paraphrasing a bit here, but does the way your AI interact change based on demographics?
No, not yet. Like we haven't gotten there, and I honestly don't know if we would. I think that's a very interesting question. But the way that I see AI interacting with our customer base is less about potentially their demographics and age, but how they're interacting with Jasper. So some things I would love to look at is the sentiment of their message, how early they are in their life cycle, how many times they've interacted with other teams. So really pulling on those data points to give us a robust picture of the customer, where they are in their journey, what that means for our response back to them in the AI. But yeah, no, demographics and age is not something that we've looked into or decided that potentially would add value to that conversation. Not saying that it can't. It probably would be very valuable for potentially some teams to layer that in. But for us right now, it's not something that we are using.
You know, it could be an interesting, like, further personalization tool. Like, I can tell you, like, putting on my tech support hat, I can say, like, the answer that would work well for me would probably be a really different answer than would work well for my grandma. If we're trying to like figure out how to like troubleshoot a Wi-Fi router. Is anyone else here the person that the family calls when they need to troubleshoot a Wi-Fi router? Just me. But I think AI is something that could definitely help out there. And then kind of taking an opposite spin on this question, just because I may have misinterpreted it from Alan, the utilization of AI with your customers and clients, there's also a chance I'm realizing this might have meant do you see a difference in AI pickup based on demographics, or is that something you guys aren't thinking about yet?
Sorry, can you repeat that question now to make sure that I'm fully understanding?
Totally. I realized there were kind of two ways this could be interpreted, and both of them are very valid questions. So I want to make sure I'm hitting on it. Have you noticed differences in utilization of AI depending on the demographic of user?
Okay, yes. To your point, I think the demographic that at least comes to Jasper is a lot of entrepreneurs, we call them prosumers, who are kind of one-person teams looking to elevate their workflows and their content creation. And then lots of large businesses that are using like Jasper for their marketing teams. Like we, again, want to be that AI partner for marketing content creation. So I think the demographics of that person might look a little bit different. I can guarantee you that my grandparents, even my parents, probably have not interacted with AI. So I think a younger demographic has probably a better appetite for this type of technology, and it has dived in a little bit more and is more receptive to it, which I think is great. But for us, it's a lot of people in this intersection of marketers, content creators coming to Jasper to use this tool for their business, for their everyday workflows.
That completely makes sense, and also might make sense why the age-related demographic maybe hasn't been as pertinent to the use case. So totally makes sense. Cool. So next up, we have a question from Nicholas. How is assembled using AI to expedite mass event codifications, events for tens of hundreds of agents? So I'm so glad you asked. So this is definitely something that's on our radar, though it's not kind of the first use case with AI that we're considering tackling, though definitely one of the ones that I would say is pretty top of mind. And I'm actually joined today inside of our chat by our AI expert, Caitlin, who you guys guys may see roaming around the chat, Caitlin, feel free to sound off if you haven't already. And she's here to answer any AI specific questions from an assembled side. But the thing that we're actually most excited to share with you guys today is we are getting started exploring potentially our own AI product, but it is very early on in development cycles. And we'll actually be having a little poll firing off here in a second, gauging if you guys would maybe like to learn a little bit more. So please feel free to pop on that poll and let us know if you want to learn more about what we're doing with AI and potentially join us as a feedback partner. We would love to have you. And of course, Caitlin's hanging out in the chat if you have any questions about our AI product or anything we can do for you on that side. And then I feel like Caitlin might not like me doing this, but you can also reach her at caitlin@assembledhq.com. For folks that may not be catching this live and can't respond to the poll, but would still like to work with us, feel free to shoot Caitlin a note and she will help you out. Well, anyway, with that, I believe this is the tail end. Oh, we have one more from Nicholas. Let's give it a go. Nicholas, how can we avoid ending up using AI to summarize a long email that was written by AI with a short prompt? I love that. Like, how can we avoid potentially baking in more human labor than necessary kind of on top of the AI? That's such an interesting question.
Yeah, that is such an interesting question if you're kind of thinking it in this like circular motion. I think, again, I use AI in workflows outside of just content creation with Jasper. So in email writing, in anything that has to do with summarization, creating posts, just like helping me break through that writer's block. So I think like it does need a little bit of a human layer. Like I'm not using it for every single email. Like I know when I can write a short response back, when I'm more efficient, when I can need to write something that's lengthier, I won't engage AI in those situations. So just like use your judgment, use your best practice. I think this is a funny question. It can definitely go in those circles. But I don't know if I've seen this use case just yet.
Totally. But I definitely think it's one that could increasingly exist. Like, for example, like I've already thought a little bit about like, what about a world where one day I go to my AI personal assistant and I say, hey, can you please book my car in for a tire change next Thursday? And then my AI personal assistant perhaps calls up the car garage Jetson style, and then their AI answers and books me an appointment. Like, I'm sure we're probably maybe not even a year away from that kind of thing. So we'll probably end up in a world where not only are humans talking to AI, but AI is talking to AI and AI on top of AI on top of AI. And it's kind of like, who's to say what exactly that world is going to look like, or perhaps if it's even something we want to lean into or want to avoid. So I think that that's a door that's still very open.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, folks. Well, with that, we've actually reached the end of our pre-planned questions and what you guys have shot over. So if anybody has any last minute burning questions they'd like us to answer, feel free to drop them in. And then do feel free, of course, or not feel free, we encourage you to respond to the poll that's up right now about our AI offering. If you're interested in learning a bit more, please let us know and we will be in touch. And then other than that, Amanda, any other parting thoughts?
No, I just think this was an awesome conversation. It will be an increasingly pertinent topic to think about AI with your support teams. So don't be afraid of it. I think just start your learning process if you're a little bit earlier in the stages. Find ways to have it work for your team. And I think it's an exciting path forward. And yeah, just thank you, Sam, for the opportunity. And this was a great chat. And I have enjoyed being here.
Cool. And for folks that might like to keep up with me after the call, you can find my LinkedIn. They're linked in the chat. Feel free to shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to chat about AI or literally anything else. I'm a pretty chatty Kathy. And then, of course, I will be shooting out contact info generally after the call. But just let us know if there's anything we can do for you, or if you're curious about our AI product, Jasper, or anything else. All right. Have a great day, y'all.